Welcome to the Statesman podcast, where we smoke cigars and have a conversation. I'm your host, Tommy Allen. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Statesman Cigar Co. And with me, as always, is my co-host, who is also a co-founder and CFO of Statesman, Joel Murphy. And today's guest is a special one. We have Spencer Paddock. He is an early-stage investor and creative consultant for tech companies. He is a co-founder of a soon-to-be-launched company in the food tech space, and he is also a director and photographer in the commercial space. Spencer,
There's a lot of spaces.
There's a lot of spaces.
I'm actually glad that you got
I
all
got
of
all
that
of
out,
it. Hey, bro,
right?
I'm
You
trying
didn't
over
mess
here.
up.
I don't want to mess something like that up. That's a lot of stuff. We want to make sure it's right.
That was good. That is good.
I could not do that.
Thank you for joining us today, bro. Pumped to have you on.
Absolutely.
How do you feel?
Good, dude. Trying to enjoy this hot-ass weather.
Yeah.
24/7.
Yeah.
95 degrees or so. And
Yeah,
It's
it is
not
hot.
cool down at all.
No.
And
At
you can
all.
keep it closer to your mouth.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
It's totally fine. It's nice and raw. So have you been traveling a lot for work lately?
Yeah, man. So I work with one of my clients as a commercial photographer where I travel to a lot of their job sites, kind of creating content for them. So primarily this year has been that. Just in the last month, I probably have done 2 or 3 of those jobs all over the U.S. But beginning of the year was primarily all like Subaru jobs, kind of shooting in Colorado for months at a time, which is always fun.
Nice.
You
Heck
know?
yeah. I mean,
Suffering
anything
in
to get out of-
Colorado.
Yeah, suffering in Colorado. Anything to
Suffering
get out of LA.
For the Saints in
It
Colorado.
is a very hard job sitting there looking at some gorgeous landscapes, right?
Yeah.
But
I'm actually curious, just as an aside. So what is that? What does a day in the life look like on a shoot like that? What are you doing?
jeez Louise, man. I let me just say this. It's not the day, it's the months
Okay, fair enough.
going into the shoot, right?
Yeah.
So with something like Subaru, we get awarded the job. And once that happens, they come to us and they say, all right, look, we're looking for a summer job or a summer shoot or a winter shoot. A lot of times we're doing the winter stuff just because it's really complicated to do something like that. But what we'll usually do is months before we're talking to a weather person, right? Which is really crazy to say that we have a meteorologist on pretty much staff looking for weather.
I will say I've
24/7.
never heard of that being an addition to a
Isn't that
shoot, so
crazy?
that's
Right.
great.
Be
That's
like,
next level.
Right.
Yeah, kinda
Yeah.
looks good to me.
Yeah.
Let's
Due
shoot.
east.
what is happening right now? But it makes sense, right? Like our weather is, especially with snow, every year is different.
Right.
Certain parts
Yeah,
of
for
Colorado
sure.
is getting snow. Certain elevations are getting snow. So
Right.
when we're trying to do a shoot for someone like Subaru, we need to make sure that we're in the right location.
Yeah.
Because we only have 1 or 2 days to get this right.
It's crazy.
Right. So this last shoot was really interesting just because we shot in the location that actually when we were scouting didn't have snow yet. But our meteorologist was like, just
Trust me.
wait,
Yeah, yeah.
trust it's
Yeah,
about
yeah.
to come. And it actually happened.
Freaking
Trust-
Gandalf
trust
over
me.
here.
Yeah,
Don't
the
worry.
night
I'm gonna
before.
bring the
Yeah.
weather.
Yeah,
Oh
don't
my
worry,
God.
it's happening. It's happening.
Freaking Thor. It's like- Oh
Yeah.
gosh.
So man, so that is pretty much like the beginning of, all right, that's one piece is understanding, all right, where is the weather going to be, what location. So a lot of times they'll tell us, look, you need to stay at 12,000 feet elevation. You need to be in this part of Utah, this part of Colorado. Once we understand the general ideas of where we can shoot, then the creativity comes in. And they say, look, we're going to shoot the cross trek this time. Cross trek is for this type of audience. Here's the stories we want to tell. So it could be, hey, we want to shoot something with ice fishing. So I had to then send someone out to say, find me a pond.
Oh god.
Go fish.
Yeah, go fish for a little bit. Go
Oh,
have
God.
fun.
That a Subaru kid. How heavy are Subarus again?
Dude,
That's
well,
funny.
and just imagine that though. You get paid to go look for sites in different locations.
Yeah,
Like, first off,
yeah.
I want that job. Like
Yeah.
all I do is travel across the U.S. and say
One of my
"That looks
friends growing
pretty."
up,
Was
like
he a
one of my best
location
friends.
scout?
No, his dad was,
Oh,
and it was
okay.
always the
Really?
fun, like the coolest stories. Always had plenty of time to do whatever he wanted. Like I'm scouting today.
Yeah, yeah, there you go.
AKA
Sure, Dad.
soccer practice.
That's great.
Yeah. Well, look, you might need a soccer field,
Yeah,
right? Like
true.
that's technically scouting. Yeah. So we get the idea. I send someone out trying to find that specific location, and I'll receive 1,000 flipping images of okay, what actually meets, not just creatively, what meets it logistically. Can I put 100 crew in that area, or
Yeah.
is that going to be hard to do, right? And so that's months before. And so it takes 2 months just to understand where we're going to be. How do we get 100 people from Los Angeles or in local area into that location? And then comes the director scout. And the director scout is okay, we're going to pick 6 different locations and we're going to spend a couple weeks going into those. And it doesn't have to be 6, it might just be 2 or 3, but we're going to go into there and see with our own eyes, does this fit the story that we're trying to accomplish. And then we hopefully find the location. Hopefully, if the scout did the job right, which they usually do, find the location, and then we start getting into getting all the tickets and getting on the job. But then comes the fun part, right? Just like I told you just a little while ago, is that last shoot we didn't have snow the day before actually shooting,
That's wild.
and
That is
it
wild.
was melting off the side of the roads. We had been prepping this whole thing,
Yeah,
and all of a sudden, the night before, we get snow. And it
You're like,
wasn't just a
praise.
little snow though. It was we got like 4 feet dumped on the
It
top
swung
of
the
the
pendulum.
mountain.
You're like, I could have
And
taken a
we
little less
had-
snow on
yeah,
this.
We could have just hit the nice medium of everything. We had to hit 4 or 5 feet of snow all of a sudden.
it's crazy.
And so, dude, like we had to on the morning, we were shooting in one part, and we had to have people with snow plows plowing the next street for us to shoot on. And so it's like this, domino effect of you just trying to keep up with everything, right?
Yeah.
And you have 3 or 4 cars to shoot in 2 days. And you have to give them all the content that you see at your local dealership
Yeah.
and on TV. And it's like, it's a lot to try to get done in a very, very short time, right? So, but it's fun. I love the
That's cool.
stress for a very short time.
That's cool.
How did you get into that? Because to me, what strikes me about it is it's like equal parts left and right brain. You're having to be creative, and you're also having to think, like you said, logistically, operationally. Did you always like know that you had that kind of split brain ability, or was it something you found over time? Like how did you get into something like that?
Yeah, growing up, I was solely a creative. And I really didn't have the logistical mindset. But luckily, kind of growing up in a household where my dad did walk that line, he walked the line on being creative and he walked the line on being very logistical. And so, growing up and through just even the last 8 years, I've learned a lot from him to be able to train that logistical side, right? Because I never had it before. Growing up, like, I was just a kid that wanted to do some drawings and take some cool pictures. I didn't necessarily understand that you had to have the logistical side, right? And then over time, one, I was forced to, because, like you said, there's so much logistics that go into it. And second off, I just had the right mentor, who was my father, to kind of say, okay, hey, you need to start learning this. But also, just to preface that, is that it's not just me doing the logistical side. And I would say I'm really not doing the logistical side on all that. That's where the producer comes in. So the producer who I work with, who has honestly driven my career in a lot of ways, that's her job. That's her job to deal with the logistical nightmare. It's my job to stay in the creative la la land, and it's her job to say, Spencer, that's not realistic,
Yeah.
right? Like
I see
you can't-
helicopters. I see
Yeah.
lots of helicopters.
Yeah,
That's so funny.
You know, I did a job recent where we're like, I want to go down this hill and I want to shoot here, and she was like, Spencer, that's an avalanche zone. You can't shoot there. And I'm like, can we not blow up the avalanche
That's so
before we
funny.
go and shoot
That's so
there?
funny.
She's like, no, that's not happening. You need to go pick a different location.
That's funny.
You know, but and there was even a recent one where we were up on. I wanted to shoot at this gorgeous location, and they kept on telling me, "Well, there's storm is coming in, Spencer. You're not gonna shoot there." And ended up being that they got 8 feet of snow the night before we were supposed
Oh,
to
wow.
shoot, and so luckily I had someone with that logistical mind and a very reasonable mind of, yeah, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
need to pick something else, right? But yeah.
That's cool. Speaking of your dad, so what is your dad's background? Because I'm curious on that and how that has it's obviously informed the professional side of being able to, on some level, do both creative and logistical.
Yeah.
What is his background in business?
Yeah, so dad worked for Whirlpool. Dad, let me actually go back. Dad has a really interesting past. He was at UE, which is a university in my hometown, and they actually co-opt at a company called Whirlpool, which builds appliances and have multiple different brands like Maytag and KitchenAid and all that stuff. And he worked his way up through the ranks, and at the end ended up being the chief product officer for Whirlpool. And so what does that like really mean? It means that you're in charge of creating the products from a engineering standpoint, from a user experience standpoint, from an industrial design standpoint for all the products across the globe, right? And so that's where dad was able to, he was a pure engineer most of his career, and then he went into this very manageable running industrial designing team. So he had to then pull this creative side, and right, so he would have like one of his jobs is that he would have each continent come to him and say, hey, these are the products we want to push. His job is then to say, okay, we're going to do A, B, and C because that's going to win in the market. So I grew up sitting in those meetings. I grew up sitting in the industrial design rooms with some of the most creative people I've ever met designing stuff. Like I'll give you a story. It's a very odd way that designers think sometimes, but I was sitting in their design facility and there was pictures of giraffes and like stingrays and
It's like
all
Disney
this
in
stuff.
here.
Yeah, and I'm like sitting there, I'm just like, build flipping appliances. What the hell are you doing with these? You know, it's a box at the end of the day. And they were literally it's a box. You
That's
can't
true.
do much about it.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what are you gonna do with a giraffe looking thing? But it was interesting because they were designing the appliances based off of the animals, and it was really interesting visually because the inspirations that they pulled from something that was so freaking out there
Yeah.
and pulled it into something that really doesn't have a lot of avenues creatively to go down. It inspired a lot of crazy cool designs that have some that you've kind of seen today, right? But having someone like my father, having someone that I could, lean on creatively, lean on logistically, and kind of guide me through all of these avenues that I've been in my life has been extremely helpful. Like I think I call him like 3 or 4 times a day, and I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
what do I do here? What's going on,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like he always laughs. He's like, you need to put me on salary. Like this needs to
That's
happen.
right. Smart man. He's like, I don't do this for free, even
Yeah,
for
for
you.
real.
Yeah,
Even
I know
for
you're
you.
my son, but business-wise,
That's right. Yeah,
we're
You're running up a tab, son.
Yeah.
Like
That's
this is
funny.
not good. That's really cool. I feel like, even in the Statesman journey, we've had to do something similar to what you're talking about of bringing almost like not. I don't know if it's completely unrelated, but skills that are like almost tangential into an industry that we had no prior experience in, and the ability to, I think. I mean, even right now, what we're dealing with, outside funding and things like that, of really being able to be like pivot and go, okay, this thing connects to this thing, and then we can use that to grow, that kind of thing. So it's interesting, and I also find it interesting that your dad's journey is almost like the reverse of yours. Like he was on like maybe the logistics operations side, and then had to add in the creative, and you started on the creative and have had to learn, the other side of the thing.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So we talked about how you are an early stage investor. I know we can't talk about the specific companies for legal reasons, but I am curious, how did you get into that as young as you are?
Honestly, it's just because of my dad, right? So kind of through my backgrounds and what I've done through companies, right? Of course, being a director and being a commercial photographer, at the end of the day, you know how to tell stories. And telling stories is ingrained in everything creative,
Yeah.
right? It's ingrained in product design, it's ingrained in user experience, and it's ingrained in branding, right? Like you guys have had to deal with Statesman. And so I've always said to myself, kind of a side tangent, is I'm not just a photographer. I'm not just a director. I'm an artist. And at that time, photography is just a tool that I pick up to be able to make a story, to be able to tell something. And so my dad, after he had retired from Whirlpool and another company, he got asked to come in and start working with some startup companies. And I was always interested in it. And honestly, my interest at first was, oh, this is cool. I just want to be a part of it. I didn't think of it like, oh, this could be something that I want to do more often.
Sure.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
it's addicting.
Like venture capitalism is my future.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah. You know, it's funny though. I've met people that, like, of course, that's what they dream of.
100%.
Doing,
Yep.
Right? Like
Yep.
they love that side, and I understand why. It's like a drug. It honestly is. The idea of being able to find a new company that could completely change the world is exciting, right? You live off that adrenaline. So my dad started working with a lot of these different companies, and I was looking at them from a creative standpoint and saying they need some help, right? A lot of times they are a group of engineers, and nothing against it. My dad's an engineer, and they're creative in their own.
Yeah, it's just not the
right?
focus. Like the presentation aspect of it is
No,
not their
it's
focus.
building stuff, and again,
Yep.
like their engineering is really creative in their own way. But when it comes to branding, when it comes to visuals, a lot of times the mindset is this doesn't matter. Why do I have to spend the time on this? Why do I have to worry about the story that is being told through design, through the words that you're saying, and as simple as just through the colors that you're choosing for the branding, right? And I saw that and I was like, I love challenges, and I'm like, I want to go help.
Yeah.
Like, how can I help? And again, too, with the mindset that I'm an artist at the very core of who I am, and photography has always, and directing has always been something I did. But knowing that I'm an artist, I'm like, man, I also want to just go help with the branding side. I want to go help with
That's cool.
all of these other things that I know know how to do, not just because I know how to tell a story, but I grew up in that space too, right?
Right.
Like I grew up with the industrial designers and all that. So yeah, so I kind of bugged my dad and got to know one of the companies, loved their product, loved what they were doing, and saw that they needed someone like me, someone that could just heighten their branding so that they could tell the proper story from a consumer side and heighten the experience that at that time, not to go into too much detail, wasn't good. Right? It was okay, but there was 30% more that could occur to make it great.
Yeah.
Right? And so I got in and started working with them, and honestly, I fell in love with the idea of not being one thing. I felt, and I was doing that for other companies and helping them from app design and branding and all that stuff. But in a startup world, you wear multiple hats, right? You guys know
You don't say.
right? Like
So many hats that I didn't want to wear.
yeah.
All
So
hats.
you're like, I've never I really
Kind
wanted
of like
to
these
do
companies
this.
get to hire for all this.
Yeah.
Why can't I hire for
Yeah,
this?
yeah. Where's my $3 million?
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
Agent.
Dang
Exactly.
it.
I'll tell you
This is-
exactly who to hire.
That's right.
yeah, yeah. But see, that's the fun part of it. Like I think as creatives, and you guys are creatives as well. Like we tend to be very ADHD and very all over the place,
A little bit. Yeah.
right? So that's where our creativity comes from, though. And a lot of people are like, dude, you need to focus on one thing. And I'm like, no, like your ability to constantly be bouncing around is when you find those aha moments, right? It's
Yeah.
not when you're a linear thinker and saying, I am just a photographer. This is only what I do,
Yeah.
right? Like, I don't think that great things happen through that. Being able to, now, I say that, I'm not saying that people should just go and do every single thing
Yeah.
and not have a,
And just half-ass everything. Yeah.
yeah. I'm not saying that, right? Like, I'm not good at necessarily logo design. Like,
Right.
I'm not in like Illustrator. Can I come up with a concept and get it 90%, 80% there? Sure. But I'm not going to be able to run it all the way
Yeah.
to, the end zone. But when it comes to the startup world, that's the type of person that you need.
Yeah, you're just
Right.
trying to move that ball like 10 yards, not all the way to the
No.
end yet. Yeah.
No. But that's the exhilarating part of all of it, right? And to be able to have meetings like we were just talking before we got on the podcast is that to have those meetings where you're creatively thinking about stuff, right? And we talk about the creative side, but another creative piece of this is also a lot of artists or creatives won't think of it this way, but it's the strategic piece. Like I fell in love with the strategy behind business
Yeah.
concepts.
That's what I love too.
Yeah.
That's like my favorite thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
And I grew I grew up with that. Like dad's role was what is the consumers going to want at the end? What strategy do we need to implement through Whirlpool, through Maytag, through KitchenAid? They all can't be selling the same thing, right?
Yeah.
They have to be having a strategy and a design that's unique to them so they can own a specific audience, right?
Yep.
And so I fell in love with that stuff. Like I loved having the conversations with my father of like, how do we strategically move from point A to point B, right? Who are partners? Who are, people that we can bring on? Like, I don't know.
Well, it's predictive strategy. So like you're doing one thing to like figure out what's going to happen 3 or 4 steps later, and so everything has like a cause and effect to it. And so that idea of like, okay, if I move this little piece of the puzzle, what other things are going to come from that, and how far along the line? Like if you're, especially with that, like appliances, like you said, it's all just a bunch of boxes. Like they all look the same, just slap a different label on it. They're all stainless steel, like but how do you have multiple companies in the same space making the exact same thing and branding to different people that will say, no, I love a Whirlpool compared to a Maytag? Well, why? Like,
Right.
Yeah, but it's what the brands make you feel, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Right. So like, we'll just use the Whirlpool brands for example. KitchenAid. When you look at KitchenAid, again, just an appliance, but from a branding standpoint, they're aiming to capture the audience who loves to cook. And when you see that in multiple ways, you feel it in their products. If you go to a KitchenAid product, touch it, feel it. It's durable. It feels strong.
It's heavy.
It's made out of real material, right? And then let's take that and let's look at the Maytag, right? Maytag is still about durability. And when you look at next time you go to a Best Buy or whatever, open up a Maytag and look in, and you'll see every single screw inside the door. The reason they do that is because they want you to know it's built with quality. You can see every screw and understand that. Okay, yeah.
I love
That's
that. I've never
crazy.
noticed that, and that's great.
That's
So
crazy.
But there's I
A
love
psychology
the
to it.
psychology
Yeah.
of what consumers might not believe that they see, but we know as artists and creatives and strategists that they do see from a branding standpoint. So you look at those two companies, right? You have one KitchenAid that is owning the, man or wife who loves to cook. They love sitting there, finding new recipes, doing all this stuff. Then you have someone like Maytag who, man, I have a ton of kids and I need an appliance that
It's
is
gonna last
going
forever.
to
Grind this thing into the
last me.
ground.
And no one likes to wash their dishes,
It's
and
true.
I want this
True.
dishwasher to take everything off, right? So
I like that.
so they own two different things, right? And this is where I think a lot of companies, a lot of startup companies miss themselves, right? You can't just come up with cool piece of technology and expect people to come, right? You can't just come up with, a cool logo and expect them to come. Like, branding is an essential piece around a concept. And in the startup worlds, they completely miss that. They just don't believe that it's necessary, right? It just looks like someone's drawing with crowns, and why do I care about what color it
That's
is?
crazy.
Right?
That's
But,
crazy.
yeah, I don't know. To me, it's been a very big eye opener through the last 6 years. I've been doing this specifically in just like the creative consulting world of how people don't understand that, right? You know, I look at brands, I look at products. It's like it's not just a product that's driving me to that, right? Like, I go and I buy a product because I have loyalty to that product, right? And I have a relationship with that product,
Yeah.
right?
Apple.
100%.
Apple.
Apple is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Let's think about Apple, right? And this is going to my topic of you don't push technology. And a lot of startups push the technology.
Right.
I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm saying that it is definitely not the biggest thing.
Yeah.
by
Because
far.
consumers are like, I don't know technology, but I know the experience the
Yeah.
technology can provide
Yeah,
me.
well, think about it. All right, so when Steve Jobs came out with the iPod, he didn't come out and say, I have a device that has 32 gigabytes of RAM that you can plug your
You can play
headphones
music and
into and all
MP3
this stuff,
and yeah.
blah, 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 right?
No WAV files, only
That's it.
MP3.
Only
yeah.
MP3.
I don't care.
Yeah.
But what does he do is he walks up on stage and he pulls out a little device and says, I can fit 1,000 songs in your pocket.
Yeah.
That emotionally connects with me automatically because I can relate to it.
Yeah.
I'm not a tech genius. What the hell do you mean?
Yeah.
32 gigabytes
yeah.
of RAM.
Yeah.
What does that equate to, right? But what emotion can
100%.
I drive with it, right?
Yeah. The story is everything. I feel like startups are like meeting somebody for the first time. You know, it's like if you
I
meet
like
someone
that
for the
metaphor.
first
Great.
time and they just say, yeah, I work at a restaurant. I have 3 kids and my name's Jim. Nice to meet you. And it's silent. You're just kind of like, great meeting you, Jim. Hope I don't meet you again. Like, but if you meet someone that's like has a story and I know you through another friend and I love to play basketball. Oh, you like to play basketball too? Oh, like those things about storytelling, like you said, is how people can like relate to a person, a product, a thing, whatever, and identify it and then see themselves in that same thing. Like if you as a startup, no one knows you, they don't know who you are. And I think even with our company, that's been a big thing that multiple friends that have businesses have said is like you need to figure out what makes you different. At the end of the day, this is just a bunch of leaves
That's still just a
that all
cigar.
look the same and wrapped together, and frankly a lot of them taste exactly the same. And but how are you different? Like your brand, your story, the fact that we're all in our 30s and we love smoking cigars and the community around it is the
Right.
focus, not necessarily the cigar. Is what's always everyone's like, oh, that's interesting. I love that concept. I love what you guys are about, and that's what opens doors.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, it's really hard to get people to understand that concept, right? And it's something that I struggle even when I'm just even creating photography content and I'm talking to all these big companies and on the marketing side and they don't even get that,
Yeah.
right? Like when you're talking to them and they don't even understand the essence of it, and it's like, stop selling the product, you're selling the experience. I'll tell you, like, I don't just shoot stuff with Subaru, I've shot stuff with Toyota and Ford and all these companies, and I always go to them and tell them the same thing. It's not about the features of the car. It's what can you do with the car? What destination can a car get you to? Oh, I have a freaking boat that I want to
Yeah.
haul because it's an emotional attachment that I have with that.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that matters. Not necessarily. I'm not saying you don't sell the other things, right? I'm not
Yeah.
saying you throw those things into the trash. What I'm saying is what you need to capture the audience emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
And the way to do that is to capture them with the things that they like.
Yeah.
Right. And so a lot of times in a startup world too, like not to hop back and forth, but like the startup world, they are so broad. And you have to be broad to some
You're kind of
degree.
throwing paint at the wall.
Yeah, you're trying to see what sticks,
Right.
right? At some point though, you have to drill down.
Yeah, we know.
Leave us alone.
We know. I think at one point we had events company, podcast, we had accessories, we had cigars, we had pairings, and we had there's one other thing we had merch. We had like apparel, and it was like all at the same time. And then you're kind of like, wait a second, only maybe 2 of these things actually work. Like, what are we doing right
We
now?
need to get great cigars and get them into hands of people.
Exactly.
but like you guys did nothing wrong in that standpoint though, because
I think we made decisions quickly. Like we didn't hang on
That's-
anything too
that's
long.
it.
Where it's like,
Yeah.
this isn't working. 3 months
Yep.
later, we're done.
But that's
like,
the whole point
yeah.
of throwing a ton of stuff at the wall and
Yeah.
understand what sticks, right? But what people do a lot of times is sees that something doesn't stick and then they
try to
hold
force
on
it.
to it
Yeah.
all the time. If it doesn't come easy, it doesn't work for your segment, right?
For sure.
But also like people go things happen, right?
Yeah.
You have to understand when you first right now with this new business venture I'm doing in the food tech world, I went through everyone that I believed could be competition for us and understood not just the direct competition, but who is the competition, you know, kind of completely out there
Sure.
on something. I went through to understand, okay, what are they selling? Who are they selling to? What type of attributes do they have with their product? So then I could understand what type of things do I want to start throwing at the wall that actually stick, right? And a lot of people don't do that homework before coming up with a concept. They say, oh, this will be a great concept. It's this field of dreams mentality, right? I'm going to build it and it's going to be great. And then they will come. And it's like,
Nope.
no.
Kind of no one's buying tickets.
Yeah. There's an issue here. We don't know what it is. You know, should have listened to the branding guy, but no, it doesn't make sense.
That's so funny.
But like, you know what I'm saying though, is like that's what when it comes to understanding where you need to position yourself, you understand the market first.
Right.
And then you start to understand, okay, what do we need to start throwing?
Yeah.
And then you start pivoting as fast as you can because it's feast or famine in the startup world. So understanding, okay, this doesn't work. All right, let's head down this direction and be ready to pivot because guess what? It's probably still not going to work. And you need to pivot to the next direction as soon as you can. If you don't, you sadly die in the startup world, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Restaurants
I
are
am
the same.
curious. What led you to the food tech space to start your business? And is this, I don't actually know, is this your first business that you're going to properly launch, or have you done other businesses?
Yeah, so this would be the first thing that I have actually co-founded with
Okay.
someone else. So this AI space is out there, and I hate bringing it up just because I think it is such
AI.
saturated.
But it's still relevant. I mean, you can't really not
You can't
talk
ignore
about
it.
100%. You can't ignore it. I'm just saying that everyone and their mom is trying to create an idea around that,
Yeah,
right? And so, understandably, that's where all the venture money is going. Everyone is talking about it right now. So, back in March, my dad was having heart surgery, and so we had plenty of time to sit around and talk about some stuff while he
That's
was
great.
recovering.
Just sit there, Dad.
Sit there. You don't have anywhere to go, but let's talk about some ideas.
I hope this question doesn't spike your heart rate.
But we started chatting just about, all right, what is a really good, useful scenario for this AI space, right? And you look at a lot of this AI stuff and it's useless.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Why the hell do I need AI to do A, B, and C for me, right? And one of the things in the space that I know just because of my father is the cooking and prepping space, right? And not to get really deep into the concept, is that it's just how do we help consumers figure out what to eat on a daily basis?
Yeah.
Right? Because it's a question that we all ask ourselves. I ask myself every single day about what to eat, and it drives me nuts
Yeah.
because I spend hours doing it, right? So, or just even going to the grocery store, and people at Trader Joe's must think I'm a flippin' lunatic because I go through one aisle, go to the next, and then I go right back to the first aisle that I was in,
Yeah.
right? Because I don't know what I want,
Yeah.
right? And I don't know what I want to help me with health reasons, so lose
Mhm.
weight, to let me be a healthier person. What do I even buy?
Yeah.
So all these questions were coming to my head of like, how do we solve this? How do we solve this to make this, you have your personal concierge in your pocket 24/7 that can help you choose and pick,
Yeah.
and not just help you choose. I don't want to pick anything. Just tell me what to do, right? Like, I'm
Yeah.
tired of picking things. There's a book that was, I think it was written in 2020, and it was called the Paradox of Choice, where consumers are tired of choosing things every day, right?
42 cereal boxes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
or like streaming 24. Like,
Yep,
I sit
yep.
there and like,
Freaking Netflix.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I don't know what I want to watch ever, right? And it's like, how do we just allow something to get to know us over time, to understand who I am, to understand my taste, to understand my brand preferences, to understand just my habits, that I like Taco Tuesdays
Yeah.
every single week.
Yeah.
And
Taco
it gets to know
Tuesday.
me enough that it can go buy things for me. It can go tell me to try this because, hey, you love spicy things and you love Asian food. Here's a new recipe that we found
Yep.
somewhere, right? And so there's much more to that concept because there's a million food planning apps out there. There's a million of them that exist. But I still don't believe that the consumer experience is right. There's still so much work that the consumer has to do themselves that I think we can hand off to technology
Yeah.
to kind of do for them, and just to automate a process that hasn't necessarily been fully automated today. Um, but there's a lot more information of like, all right, what can we do with the data? What can we do with all these other
Right.
type of things that makes the concept much bigger than what I'm discussing right now? But yeah, so long story short, that's how I got into it. It's just kind of something that,
It's really interesting because I think, like, to use Netflix as an example, so they push 1,000 new shows every like month, kind of thing. And what's interesting about it is the overwhelming amount of choice uh, leads you back to, I just default to what I
What I
already
like, yeah.
what I like, what I already watch. What's interesting about your concept is and every food planning app is like, here's 2 or 3 choices usually, and it's like, I don't know, so just give me a pizza on Thursday, like it doesn't. What's interesting about your concept is that by eliminating choice to a degree and and that technology learning your behavior, you actually will get exposed to new things. It will lead to like
Mhm.
development versus I'd only go with
Yeah.
what I know because I don't know. I don't want to be
100%.
exploring something that is unfamiliar.
Yeah.
But knowing like users understanding that this is something that's based off of me, then it knows that the choice that it's informing for me is based off of me, not off of
Right.
what the government says is healthy or off of what this company is trying to push because their
Yeah.
partners are in this space, like whatever.
Yeah,
So
100%.
it's really, I think that could be really interesting.
Well, and you're saying it too, like, I don't want someone else to tell me what works, like from a government standpoint, right? Government will tell you, or some other agency, whatever it might be, say this is what's healthy, right? But if that healthy choice doesn't fit your desires and cravings, you're never going to stick with it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I can create something that understands you so well that I can still keep that element of taste and desire in there while at the same time keeping you on the right path that you want to be on from a health standpoint, from a cost saving standpoint, whatever that angle might be for you. I think I think data, I think everything that we have at our fingertips today in 2024 can help drive that experience to be an actual meaningful experience and not
Yeah.
just a freaking another chore to do, right? Yeah, we'll see. It's it's a new idea, fresh idea that we'll hopefully launch in the next year with some beta testing and see where it goes.
Cool.
I love it. As we start to wrap, I have two questions. The first one is, I always like to kind of have a little tidbit for people who are wanting to, especially because we live in LA and everybody's trying to break into some sort of industry out here.
Yeah.
How do if you could recommend, so someone's wanting to get into what you do in the creative space, so being a director, being a photographer, these type of things, what's like 2 or 3 things that you did that you would recommend, hey, this is how you would go about, so that you don't like start as a director, but these are the 2 or 3 steps you take at the initial thing, and that puts you on the path toward that.
Yeah. So industry, I'm sure everyone knows this, is all about who you know. It's all about relationships, right? And I always tell people that are coming out to LA or going to any place that they're going to join, it's a small world, right? It's a lot smaller than
It's a lot smaller than it feels.
Yeah, and it's a lot smaller than when you're a kid, right? You look into this giant, massive world, and it's like, oh, it's huge. And the reason I say that is that you can really hurt yourself by creating enemies, right? And I think that's very easy for people to do. And I honestly, I struggled with that a little bit. I was a young, cocky kid that came out here thinking that I knew everything, right? Like, I think everyone that comes into Los Angeles, you come out here for a dream, right? And you're
Yep.
wanting to achieve something, and with that comes this naivete to say no one can tell me what the right thing is to do, right? And so I struggled with that in the beginning, and so my biggest advice would just be like, look, come out here, be a sponge, and want to learn from the best that you can and build the relationships with those people. And so when I came out here, I started assisting a photographers and artists that I used to read papers about in college, right? And it opened my eyes. Like, I was sitting in my hometown of Evansville, like, I know how to light a photograph. Like, this is really easy. Like, whatever, right? And then I come out and I get on set and I'm like, oh, that's what they do. And that's all the things I
This is really hard.
yeah.
And there's lots of money.
This is not as easy as I anticipated, but I just see so many people burn bridges, and like, I've done that in the past just because you go in with the concept of it's a big world, and I can't do anything wrong, and I'll meet someone new. And again, though, too, is coming out here and learning as much as you can. You can learn something from everyone. And the mindset, I was on LinkedIn, and it showed this animation of water pouring on a brick, and it represented someone that was going into a conversation with their mind closed off, versus water pouring on a sponge, representing someone that was ready to receive criticism, receive advice on something, right? And so that's who you should be. You should be the person coming out here and saying, you know what? I'm confident in what I do and what I know. I don't know everything, and I want to get to that point. I want to get to the point where I can be as good as all these other people, right? So
Love that.
Awesome.
So every podcast, we ask our guests, the final question is related to excellence. And we always like to ask, how do you define excellence?
Oh, jeez.
And that's usually what it starts with.
It's such a hard question because I am a perfectionist.
Yeah.
Like hardcore. Like I see the flaws in everything, in good and bad. So excellence from a creative side is almost something that is untouchable a lot of times, just because I'm always searching, which I find as a good thing because I'm always raising the bar and
Yeah.
trying to do the new thing and the best thing, right? So it's hard for me to just say like excellence is this and this for me because it's something that I set out so far ahead of me that I'm always redefining it every single day.
I like that.
That's
That's your
good.
definition. It's
That
like
is good.
this something that is untouchable, and also something that you can continually pursue.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
That's good.
So
Amazing. Well,
Mhm.
I know for sure. I was thinking about obviously as you're talking, I definitely have some takeaways from this, which I always love. Like some podcasts, it's just like conversation, and sometimes it's like, oh man, I never thought of it that way, or this can be applied here. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for
yeah,
joining us for this, and just having a conversation around the topics we talked about. It was great. Um, for everyone out there, like, comment, subscribe, all the things. And thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Statesman podcast.
See you later.
thanks guys.